you gave some really great answers about sort of the city as a whole. So this is just really going to focus on the Trinity Square portion. But just to sort of get going, what stood out to you? Again, what impressions you had of the space? Um, I don't give interviews very often, so this is fun. Okay. So yeah, just general impressions and sort of what stood out.
So at the Trinity Cathedral site,
Mm-hmm.
so there's now that monument that was built, I guess, after communism fell, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I don't know. Maybe if I knew more, maybe if I were Russian, I would know the history and I would just instantly get it when I visited the site. But as a foreigner, and especially someone who doesn't read or speak the language, it didn't really evoke the site in terms of what the building used to be that was there. I've seen other, and I don't know like if there's anything that remains that they tore out the foundations or anything. But, I've seen other historic sites where they may reveal foundations or something like that to kind of give you a sense of the scale of the place, or the um, or the building. And there's other ways to interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
The Ben Franklin House in Philadelphia, they basically just have a frame built out of steel showing kind of where the house was. So something like that might help evoke it. I think that's kind of what I thought. Like it was hard to really get the site and its history from how they've interpreted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was mostly kind of disappointed that nothing was left, and that was kind of the true beginnings of the city. Um, yeah, I always get a little nostalgic or sad when things are destroyed, and post World War II Europe just makes me so angry with everything gets bombed out, and so yeah, it's evoked feelings of disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, my second question was sort of you kind of answered it, but the space is very historic, but it's hold that steady. But it's not always something that immediately comes across. So, just sort of as you were walking through, since you both said it wasn't as historic as you would have expected it to be, how would you have described the mood if you had just sort of walked through without necessarily knowing what had been there?
It's a lovely park, and that's probably what I would have thought. Maybe sit down, read a book, you know, eat a sandwich or something. But yeah, like I said, without really knowing the history, not really. Maybe Russians grow up learning this history, and so they just know it when they're there. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really feel like, yeah, I mean, other than just thinking this is a very lovely park. That's really probably the beginning and the end of it.
I would have thought I was leaving the city, kind of heading out, not exactly suburbs, but on my way to the suburbs.
Okay. All right. And it's kind of funny in that it's kind of sprawling, but it is almost a collected area for a bunch of different things. There is the small chapel. Peter's cabin is also nearby. There's the Kashinskaya house, the mosque. So, do you feel um, the other site we visited sort of had Let Me Sod, or the Summer Garden, had the Field of Mars, had a lot of things very concentrated that seemed to add to each other. Do you feel that this space was disjointed, or do you feel that it gave any sort of a cohesive impression?
Wanna go first?
Yeah, I didn't really feel any cohesion to the spot.
Okay.
Yeah, I would not have known what I was looking at without your tutelage.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There, right next to the park, at I guess the south side, if I'm remembering my geography correctly, there's like this very ugly modernist gray building, and then right next to that is like this very beautiful Baroque building, and then we have this park in front of it. Um, yeah, just like contextually, like the site just feels kind of broken in that sense, and um, you know, and if there is any sort of connection between the log cabin and the Trinity Cathedral site, I think that that large modernist building basically kind of breaks that connection in terms of the interpretation of the site. But you know, what that large modernist building represents in history, I don't really know. I would guess something from the Soviet era, and you know that's history too. So it's kind of how these sites work. Is you know it may not always be the prettiest, but you know does it tell the story it needs to tell? So you know it's hard to say.
He's a preservationist.
All right. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I have to ask. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate this.
Oh, thank you.
It's
You're
been great.
welcome.
All right, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your trip.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I hope you
Alright.
enjoy the rest of your summer.
We think we will.
Yeah.